Joining me now with reaction, Congressman James Comer and Dr. Dina Grayson, who ran for Congress as a Democrat in 2016. All right, Dina, now explain to me how Democrats, with this legislation that has no chance in hell of passing, they aren't trying to completely alter the American electorate with this bill.
No, what they're trying to do is the most American thing possible, which is empower people to vote. I mean, in order to have a functioning democracy, we need people to go to the ballot box and vote. And so what this is doing is allowing people to register to vote more easily, declaring Election Day a federal holiday, which, by the way, we're one of the only democracies in the entire world that does not have either Election Day on a weekend or have Election Day being a national holiday.
Well, we have Election Day, Dina. We have Election Day that stretches for weeks and sometimes months. How did we possibly survive, Congressman Comer, as a constitutional republic? When my mother was a waitress, my dad worked at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft, they somehow managed to get to the polls. It was only one day.
Right.
And now we need to have at-home registration, use your computer, same-day registration.
Right.
Now, why is that happening? It sounds like, oh, it's so easy. How did we ever function before?
Well,
Nothing's legitimate until we have instant voter registration.
Absolutely. This is just what McConnell said, the Democrat Political Protection Act. They're trying to build upon what they did in California, all the shenanigans they pulled in California with the ballot harvesting. They're trying to be creative. This is not the answer. People are empowered to vote. It's easy to vote. Same-day voter registration, that's a backdoor attempt by the Democrats to get more people to vote that are not legal citizens. And that's their game plan to try to beat Donald Trump in 2020, and we're not going to let it stand in the House.
Dina, here's another thing that I'm disturbed by as someone who's more of a federalist on these issues, is what's happening with states' rights in all of this. This bill would usurp state authority to set voter ID, also, I believe, on felons, whether felons could vote or not. And that's traditionally been a state prerogative. This is a sweeping usurpation of states' rights, in my view. How do you react to that?
Again, I can't think of anything more American than empowering our citizens to vote.
What if they don't want to vote, Dina? What if they have no desire to vote? In this bill, they require you to be registered. It's your right as an American citizen to be left alone. If you don't want to be registered to vote, why the heck does the government have any right to tell you you have to register to vote? What's the constitutional provision you're relying on?
They're not forcing you to go to the ballot box, Laura. I mean,
they're forcing you to register. What if you don't want to register?
Well,
why is that not pro-choice?
What about the selective service? We force everyone to register for the draft.
That's because of wartime provision. That's because of an emergency wartime provision.
No, that's for everybody right now.
That's
everyone has to register. Every male has to register at 18 for the draft.
That's because in a time of national emergency, we have to be able to mobilize people quickly. This is not mandating that someone, as an individual who does not want to vote, has no desire to vote, should not have to vote or not have to be registered to vote. It's the same stuff they want to do on gun registration, national gun registration.
You're exactly right. Democrats think more government's the answer to everything, and this is another example of more government.
Let's talk about what the Democrats think about 16-year-olds voting. I love this, okay? People think this is like a internet, like total hoax, that this isn't true. But that's right, because Democrats today voted to support the states that want to lower the voting age to 16. Dina?
Well, my understanding is that provision actually did not make it in the final bill. There was an amendment that was proposed to allow 16-year-olds to vote.
A majority of Democrats voted for it.
But it didn't pass. But what it is allowing is for 16-year-olds to basically kind of pre-register to vote. And again, don't we want our youth to get involved and be ready to vote and get excited to vote once they turn 18? And that is part of the bill. And I think that's a great thing for America.
Congressman, are you against the youth voting? Are you and the Republicans must just hate the youth and you don't want them to vote?
We want everyone to vote. But I'm astonished that the Democrats want to raise the age of Americans to be able to own a gun or to be able to purchase tobacco or alcohol, but they want to lower the age for voting. We have nothing that stands in the way of young people voting today. I'm all about more people voting, and I think that we have a great democracy, and the Democrats are continually trying to change that to benefit themselves.
Dina, do you think illegal immigrants should be able to vote in the United States?
Well, they're not allowed to vote. I mean, the reality is...
Do you think my question is, if someone's been here 10 years, They maybe have fraudulent identification, but they are paying taxes out of their salary. Shouldn't they have, and I'm talking as if I were playing a Democrat today, shouldn't they have a right to vote?
I believe in a path to citizenship, and once you have citizenship, I think that all citizens of our country should be able to vote.
You're a raging conservative in the Democrat Party, Dina. That's why we love having you on.
We are joined now by Professor Alan Dershowitz of Harvard Law School. He's Professor Emeritus there. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, just to explain people who are just joining us, this William Singer was allegedly the leader of this ring, and he operated out of Southern California, at least in part, as somebody who helped your kid get into college. He did admissions counseling. And his approach initially was two-pronged. He had one very elaborate scheme to help kids cheat on the ACT or the SAT, which involved having them submit a note from a doctor that they needed extra time because they had learning disabilities, and then he would get someone in the room to either take the test or change their answers. His other venue was to bribe coaches at various universities to say that they were recruiting the child for one of the athlete spots and get them in that way. That coach would take a bribe, and then when the kid got to school, they would either fake an injury, not, join the team for a minute and quit, or just say that they changed their mind about playing the sport. And some people, they said, they alleged in this press conference, paid as much as $6 million, and they paid the money to a charity, so everybody involved deducted the amount of their bribe from their taxes.
Wow.
What is the penalty for something like this? I mean, how do you see this case unfolding?
Well, first of all, this is the worst scandal involving elite universities in the history of the United States. Let there be no doubt about this. Nobody can diminish the importance of this, involving as it does some of the major universities in the country. Look, every individual who's charged should be presumed innocent. We have to wait and hear the evidence. But this involves the most elite universities, coaches, the SAT, the ACT. This is really one of the great scandals of the 21st century. Having said that, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. Remember, this doesn't involve the super rich. The super rich buy buildings for the university. They donate hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't have to worry about their kids getting in. This involves the very rich, the people who can't quite afford to give a building but can afford to spend $5 or $6 million. And once this investigation is complete, we will see that this person, Singer, if the allegations are true, went over any possible line and did clearly commit crimes, and apparently he's pleading guilty, that in some respects this is a matter of degree, that we will see other mini scandals involving contributions to universities, coaches who are prepared to stretch the rules. Look, at bottom, the fault for this lies in the fact that we've abolished grades at universities in many parts of the country. Nobody fails anymore. Because if we went back to the situation that occurred when I started teaching at Harvard almost 60 years ago, this couldn't work because these students would fail out. It didn't pay for them to come into a college because they wouldn't make it through if they didn't have the academic resources to make it. But today nobody fails. And today nobody gets bad grades. Nobody even gets C's. And in many universities, they've abolished grades. So there's no way of testing whether they are qualified or competent. Once they get into college, many just sail through because of the way universities have decided to treat their students. And so I think we will see this as the tip of a very deep iceberg. Look, I don't believe there should be special slots for athletes. Colleges are not supposed to be about athletics. Athletics is supposed to be collateral. But today, kids who aren't qualified or are minimally qualified get in because they're a good quarterback or a good soccer player. That's the beginning of the problem. Now, this case doesn't involve that. This case involves overt cheating, and particularly on the SATs and bribery. And so it crosses a line. But I think once this investigation unfolds, we'll see that there's more to this than just the really bad guys at one end of this spectrum. It's a continuum.
Yeah. This is so elaborate, this scheme, because he had developed relationships, it seems, and they said this in part, but it's obvious from how it played out. He had established relationships with coaches at many different universities, with people who worked within the testing community at the SAT and the ACT. I mean, it is so elaborate to have connections in all these places and to find people in all of these places that would be willing to take bribes. It seems like inevitably it was going to come out. The way they said that they stumbled upon this was a totally unrelated case. They had someone in their grips who said, by the way, I have a huge scandal that you guys don't know anything about, and here's a tip on it, and that's how they got started down this road. I would ask you...
And that's the way many of these...
That's the way it happens, yeah. And conspiracy, I mean, like, what is that? So this is racketeering, no?
This is RICO, racketeering. It involves an enterprise. Obviously, the Singer Company is the enterprise, and through the enterprise, they committed these crimes of bribery, of fraud, of cheating, and RICO carries a very, very significant criminal sentence. It also has civil liability, and we're going to see this thing spread. Questions are going to raise whether the kids who got in should have their diplomas revoked. What if they got A+, and what if they did very, very well? It involves, obviously, the coaches, each of whom is presumed innocent, some of whom took the money for themselves, according to this indictment, some of whom shared the money with the university. The real question is how high up in the university does this go, and how high up in the SAT and ACT does this go? You know, I hope it doesn't bring about the result of abolishing the SAT or abolishing the ACT. That would be a terrible mistake. It would mean that kids get into universities based on who their parents are, their personalities, collateral factors like race and other issues. We still need standardized testing, but now we've seen the standardized testing being corrupted itself. So this is a major, major scandal that involves every aspect of admissions to universities. I hope I'm right by saying Harvard isn't involved, because at least at the moment, the university that I taught at for 50 years doesn't seem to be involved, though the university I went to, Yale Law School, does seem involved. It's just such a tragedy. It's a tragedy for kids who didn't get into college because other kids cheated their way into college. It's a tragedy for innocent people at these universities who will now be suspect. And so we have to carefully look at the evidence and make sure that the presumption of innocence remains, but that if there is evidence of guilt, the guilty are punished.
Yeah, and the question becomes, a lot of these students are currently at these schools right now. What does the university decide to do about that? They made that point that it would be up to the university to decide if the child stays. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.